So with a fully soldered harness, one of the first things to do to start actually building your Creatabot is to set up the servo. Now, in order to do that, we will need to power the servo and have it connected to the radio, because the first step is actually putting the horn. So the horn is the piece that actually goes on the servo itself. So we'll go ahead and get the servo out of the bag. And you'll notice that servos, there's a motor in here. So servo is just short for servo motor. There's a servo, and there's some circuitry and sensors that let it know where it is. So this metal piece that sticks off with all of the teeth on it, that's the spline. So the spline is what lets us drive the servo to specific points based on the stick location. So we need to get this connected to the radio so that we can see, with the stick down, is it in the right spot? With the stick up, is it in the right spot? So kind of to help prevent confusion and make it easier, the first step in setting up the servo is we usually go ahead and clip it into the micro servo adapter. So the chassis is big enough to fit a full-size servo, but we really like these micro servos. So we use the micro servo adapter, and you can see that there's a cutout for the cable. And when this goes into the chassis, it's going to go right there. So we need to set this up. So in order to do that, we will get our harness and we'll connect the servo. So servo wires are generally signal, power, and ground. In our case, they are yellow for signal, red for power, and brown for ground. Sometimes signal is white, sometimes ground is black, but both our connectors and our servo wires themselves are yellow, red, brown. So when we connect that, we just make sure it's yellow to yellow and brown to brown. Now for the battery, many times we find it easier to actually switch the kind of the orientation of these two cables, where we want the this will go in the bot this way. We want the charging cable, which is the 3 thinner wires and the white connector. So this is the charging cable. The charger goes on there. This is the discharge cable. So the discharge cable, it means that discharging the battery into the bot. So that's what actually powers the bot. So these are the 2 thicker cables with the big red connector. So when we have that, like I said, we'll want, when you're looking at this side of the battery, we want the discharge to be closer to this long side of the battery. So often that you have to tuck the charging cable kind of through the discharge. But if we've got that, we will check, make sure our switch is off. So you can see that the battery connector brings power to from this orientation, the left leg of the switch. So when the switch is over here, both of these legs are cold. They're not connected to power, because again, power comes in here. When you move the switch over, then you're connecting power from the battery to the red, which goes out to the Malenki. So we'll make sure that this is switched off. And there are features on here that try to make sure that you only plug this in correctly. But if you try really hard, you can't jam it in backwards. So don't do that. You can also just notice red to red and black to black. So we'll go ahead and plug this in. Now, with it plugged in, we can go ahead and turn on our Malenki. Now, you'll notice that we got red, which should always come on when you turn the power on, and flashing blue. So when the Malenki is flashing blue, that means that it is in bind mode. It's ready to bind to a radio. If you have a brand new radio, then you can just start right off by holding the bind key and turning it on. If you happen to be using a radio that's already set up for something else and you want to go to a new model, so most of these radios can hold many models. To do that, turn it on, you'll hold OK, get into the menu, leaving it here on the left with system setup. You hit OK again, model select, hit OK again, and then you just hit the up button once to go up to the next model. Now you hold cancel to save. Yes, it's weird to hold cancel, but you hold cancel to save, and then you can cancel your way back out, and you can see now we're on model 8. We have our blue flashing LED. So we're going to turn this off. We will hold the bind key while we turn this back on. And you saw the RX binding and then binding OK. So now it's bound. So our Malenki has gone from flashing blue, which was in bind mode, and because it was powered for at least 5 seconds, it's now in configuration mode. So it's actually flickering ever so slightly. So in configuration mode, we could send it some pulses on channel 5 to change the configuration of the Malenki itself, and it's not yet responsive to the left stick or the weapon stick. So there's 2 ways to get a Malenki out of configuration mode and into drive mode. So if we were to power cycle the Malenki, turn it off, turn it back on, it would immediately connect to the radio and would be in drive mode immediately. Because it got into configuration mode, as soon as I move this right stick, then it's going to leave configuration mode and go into drive mode, and you'll see the motors jump. So we can see that both of our motors work, and now our servo is responsive also. So what we want is, with the stick down, we are going to want the servo horn to be forward, about 45 degrees forward of vertical. And we'll make sure that it does move in the correct direction, and it does. So let's get out a servo horn. And we're going to use the single-sided servo horn. And what I mean by that is, when you look in here, you can see that one of these is 4-sided, one is 2-sided, and one is 1-sided. So we'll go ahead and get out servo horn itself, and with the Creatabot servos, the servo horn screw is in the bag. Now, don't always do your best to not lose servo horn screws. Many servos have fairly unique or hard to find thread pitches on those screws, so they're hard to replace. So don't lose that. So again, we will start by, because the stick is down and the Malenki's on, we'll put this at about 45 degrees forward of vertical, and then move the switch up. So we're getting good motion. Now we're slightly, so with Flip Frenzy, you do want this pretty close to centered vertically, and we're getting more travel to the left, so counterclockwise, than we are clockwise. So let's see what it looks like one spline further clockwise. I do press on nice and tight, so we were there. Let's go. That's one further. Here are we jumping more than one? I think we are. So we want to go one spline back. There we go. So that's definitely past 45 forward, past 45 backwards. So we're going to call that good. And the horn is all the way on. At this point, we can go ahead and turn off the bot and turn off the radio. Make sure you don't pull that horn off, because when a servo is not powered, you can just spin it around. So you don't want to lose where it was put on. So we'll go ahead and tighten this up. It's one of the few Phillips screws in the entire bot. Now, this is a steel screw that's going into a steel spline. So you can go ahead and make this fairly tight. You don't want to go crazy with it, but this will be holding all the power of the weapon, all the strength and rotation. So you want that good and snug. So there is our servo set up and ready to install.